everyone, it's Fiona here. I am very excited to have an expert on mental health and bullying prevention. Adam Collins here with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm great. Well, I know you as being a board member for Act to Change, the nonprofit that I am working with, but I did more research on you and I found out that you have written books about bullying preventions in schools. Can you share more about your work on this topic?
Yeah, definitely. The book I wrote is really focused on, it's geared towards educators so that they have the best information for understanding what the key factors are for preventing bullying and responding to bullying. But then not only that, but also how do we actually take this information and put it into place in a way that is actually going to be useful. So we talk about the 5 core components of effective bullying prevention, which includes everything from making sure you have a positive school climate to working with families and the students themselves when you're trying to prevent bullying, and then all the way over to policy. What does your policy say that you should be doing around bullying prevention? And then the whole second half of the book is we showed you these 5 core components that you should be putting in place in your school.
What are a few takeaways that you can share with us from the book? It doesn't have to be all things that can help us and our families and our communities, especially towards AAPI communities, that can help de-escalate situations regarding harassment.
The key thing to understand is that there can be bullying, and then in some cases, bullying can also be considered harassment or discriminatory harassment. In the research, they call it bias-based bullying because you're biased against somebody because of some feature of them. So it could be their race, it could be their gender, any of those types of features. So the key thing for us as parents or us as caregivers is understanding, what are those signs of bullying, which we talk about in the book, and how do I respond interacting with my kids so that I can be as helpful as possible. But also giving them an understanding of what are the conversations I need to be having with the school, because if bullying is happening because a student is Asian American, for example, then they get some additional protections from the federal government based on the fact that the bullying is happening because of their perceived race or identity.
You have been an educator for many years, so you have seen this phenomena of harassment, probably from not just schools and offline, but you've also seen it emerge, how pervasive the internet can be for communication. Do you feel that they're both just as harmful? Why is it still happening at this day and age with students in schools in the real world with adults?
Yeah, so with cyberbullying specifically, it's the common theme that you hear is that it is something that, you're anonymous behind a computer or a phone, and you can put whatever's out there. And if you want to not let people know who you are, then that's pretty easy. You can make fake accounts, those sorts of things. So that's one reason it's pervasive. Second one is that the phones and social media in general are created to be addictive. And so we're consistently going back to those platforms. Whereas if you're face-to-face, going to school isn't typically thought of as addictive. So you're forced to go there typically until you're 18. But when you have something that's so easily accessible and you can get in touch or reach anybody in the world, then it's a lot easier to have those spur of the moment thoughts be something you just type down and press send in 5 seconds. And you're not seeing the face of the person that you're doing it to. And so I think there's even like a study or some sort of video that I saw where people would take something that was written online and have them say it like in person to somebody, and it wasn't the exact person they were saying it to, but just actually saying it in person, facing somebody and looking them in the eyes is very different than just looking at a screen and typing it. So it's a lot easier to put that kind of vitriol out into the world when it's just behind a screen rather than to somebody's face.
Yeah, I agree with you too. There's definitely more accountability when you're looking at a person with feelings in the eyes and saying whatever words maybe you were afraid to say, but you could write behind a computer or phone screen. The reason why I ask because you have done a lot for Mountain State Department of Education, in which what you have studied and implemented for bullying prevention have showed results year after year and has shown a 32% drop in student-reported bullying. First of all, congratulations. And can you share with us what attributed to such a success?
Yeah, I think what makes the program or the grant program that I run really a success is the adults who are making the effort to actually put those best practices into place. Like I said before, there's barriers that come up if you're an educator when you're trying to implement a best practice, whether that's time or health or whatever it might be. The folks that I work with are just so passionate about making sure kids feel safe and that if something does happen, that they are protected. And I think a lot of it comes down to the work that they're doing. And that includes everything from making sure that the schools feel like a welcoming place. If they see some sort of bullying happening, making sure they intervene in the moment. Even if it might be something that they're not sure if it's bullying, the consequence of not responding, if it actually is much worse than taking the 5 seconds to just redirect the behavior. So we've seen some great gains in the reduction of bullying in our state. The thing that I will say is over the past year or two, there have been results coming out about the prevalence of bullying across the country, and it's definitely on the rise compared to pre-COVID times. And so we know there's still a lot of more work that we need to be doing. And I would encourage any educators who are listening to get the voice of your students involved, because they're the ones who are on the ground. They know what's actually happening, and they're the ones who have the best ideas for what would be effective for young people and what they would find to be most beneficial.
For the data that you're seeing in schools right now, is there a specific type of student who's being targeted, or it's kind of all over the map in terms of perpetrator and victim?
What we are seeing is, so like it could be certain cities or school districts that are putting out that information, like San Antonio, for example, the state of New Jersey. But then there's also a study that came out in the past year from the Boys and Girls Club, where they surveyed tens of thousands of their youth and are seeing a rise as well. In general, the student groups that are most often targeted for bullying are those who are in the LGBTQ plus community, as well as students with disabilities, whether that's like a physical disability or maybe a cognitive disability. They're typically the most likely to be targeted for bullying. There's also, with bullying, it really kind of mirrors what's going on in our society and in our world. So all you have to do is look back to whenever COVID was really prevalent in our society. We started to see a lot of Asian students being targeted for bullying, much more so than they were in the past. If you look at some data just coming out around bullying for Palestinian or Muslim youth with the October attack on Israel, then we start seeing an increase in bullying around those student groups as well. So, bullying isn't something that just happens one-on-one against two students. It's something that is influenced by world events, by your local community. And so that's why it's important to understand, like, everybody has a role to play, because it impacts those direct interactions with our youth.
What would you say is the purest, quickest form of a solution when you see that happening?
Yeah, so there's no magic potion to get rid of bullying, unfortunately. But the quickest thing is for those who are in power. So if you're in a school, it'd be the adults in the school to intervene when and if they see something. Because the culture that you create in your school is something that every student feels. And so if a student is being bullied and an adult is nearby and doesn't help, then what the message that student's receiving is that this is not a safe place. I'm not going to be able to learn. I'm not going to be physically safe. And if that's the case, then that student is essentially lost until something changes. And so the quickest, easiest thing to do as somebody who's in power is to interrupt that behavior.
And for bullies, they must be hurting themselves inside, or there's something else that is going on we're not aware of. Is there a way to prevent less bullies in schools and in the real world?
So there's been a lot of research looking at empathy, helping students understand what the actual impact is on the students they're targeting. That has shown some positive effects in terms of helping the perpetrating students understand the impact that they're having. I think the other important thing is universal, like for every single student in a school, having them have a understanding of the social and emotional learning concepts. So that's everything from just knowing what your emotions are when you're having them, and that's more for like the younger students, to understanding how to problem solve a situation. So if bullying is happening and there's a perpetrator who is wanting to be, let's say, more popular, make other kids laugh and like them, sometimes they will take the route of making fun of somebody else. And in their mind, they're just kind of making a joke and it's not that big of a deal. But if that happens several times to the same student because it worked the first time and everybody laughed, and all of a sudden, even though that student maybe doesn't intend to really be causing a lot of damage, they are for that student who's being targeted. And so being able to understand better ways and other ways to get the same outcome is really important for teachers to be able to provide.
I am not so familiar with public policy when it comes to laws in school districts, but how important do you feel for the contributions that you did for Mountain State? Can this be a federal thing for most schools, and how can we get there?
There's no federal law on bullying. So it's really just a patchwork of state laws. So the laws that I have in my state is probably different than the laws that you have in your state. In general, there's the boilerplate language of bullying is bad. We don't accept bullying in our school, and there are consequences for it. The only federal protections really are whenever it goes into the discriminatory harassment, or you're being bullied, somebody's being bullied because of their race, gender, ethnicity, those sorts of things. So there's really, unfortunately, no federal law against bullying until it reaches discriminatory harassment.
Spoken with a few of your youth ambassadors from years past. They are really inspiring because at that age, they have this mindset to help others and uplift others. I think it's just an amazing trait to carry on even into your working years. I wanted to ask you about your work at Envision Zero Bullying. Can you tell us how this program works?
I started Envision Zero Bullying when I realized that there's a lot of public schools that receive support around bullying prevention. But if you're a private school or an independent school, there's really not a lot out there for you and your kids. And, I know that bullying doesn't discriminate, and so I don't feel like the effective bullying prevention practices should discriminate either. So I started it in an effort to have an avenue for independent schools or private schools to get those bullying prevention best practices. So I'm able to provide them with a whole host of different services, one of which is a bullying prevention audit, where we're able to take some of the policies and the procedures that they have at their school, review all of those pieces, and provide some recommendations about what could improve, what their strengths are, and then it's all aligned to those 5 core components of effective bullying prevention. So that's really exciting. The other thing that's really, which I think is really exciting, is we also have, I'm partnering with a professor in Kuwait who has several independent schools in Kuwait where she is providing training for staff. And all the lessons are on our website, and they're all in Arabic because that's the language of the staff, their first language. And so they're able to get those bullying prevention best practices within the cultural context that makes sense given their setting. And so really I guess I'm just trying to fill the gaps where I'm seeing them, whether that's private schools or internationally as well.
What are the resources that we can tap into, even as working professionals, if we want to find help if we are experiencing any type of harassment online?
Yeah, so it depends on essentially who the harassing is coming from. So like I said, if it's anonymous, then that becomes more difficult. If it's something where there's workplace bullying occurring face to face, and that's carrying over to something online, then the important things to remember are documenting everything, whether that's taking screenshots or any other kind of documentation that you can grab around who the person is or the account is, what they're saying or doing. And whenever it's workplace bullying, then the majority of companies will have some policy against harassment. And so then it's essentially gathering that data or that information and being able to present it to whoever the HR folks would be, to make the point that this is something that's happening and it's against policy, and that you're able to show them with proof what's going on, so that you can get some sort of resolution there.
Thank you so much. I feel that in any type of environment, there always is a safe space, regardless if you're in school or in a company setting. And you just have to be brave enough to share and tell, and someone is always going to be there to stand up for you. What is it that you hope to see in the next 5 to 10 years in your work moving forward?
Yeah, I think at least for the Act to Change work that we're doing, what I'm excited about is that we at this point we have our first 3 full staff members. It's our first time ever having staff members. We're still a fully volunteer board. We're really a board of directors that is involved in the work directly. The thing I love about being a board member and the vice chair of programming for Act to Change is that we center youth constantly. So our 2 main programs are our homeroom program and our youth ambassador program. And so our homeroom program, it's essentially us providing resources and having an influencer go into a school to kick off the effective bullying prevention components that I was talking about earlier, and creating an entire semester-long program where students start to feel more like they belong in their school. And that's something I'm really excited about. What we just relaunched is our Youth Ambassador program. And in our Youth Ambassador program, we have 20 youth, high school-age youth around the country who are going to have a school year-long experience where they are going to be interacting with mentors in different areas, whether that be technology or social impact change. It's a whole bunch of different areas where they're going to be able to learn from some of the best minds. And at the end of the program, they're going to have a community action project where they are focusing on improving the visibility of Asian American Pacific Islander individuals in their community, or something as simple. I think the last go around that we had in our cohort, there was a whole initiative for the end of the year program where some of our youth were able to take some of the influential AAPI community members in their community and just add their information to Wikipedia to raise the visibility of the positive impact that AAPI individuals have across the country. So we're really excited about the opportunity to have these 20 high school age youth really learn more about leadership, because every single one of them is amazing and has done so many amazing things already. We're really honored to be able to have them be part of our program so we can give them a platform to be even more effective in the work that they're trying to do. And so what we're trying to do at Act to Change is move from having an all volunteer board doing the work to having a more sustainable system so that we can all really put our best foot forward and provide the best services that we can to our AAPI children and our youth. And so I'm excited in 5 to 10 years, I could see Act to Change just as an organization being something that is much more in every single state. Like if we are able to push forward our homeroom program, if we're able to push forward our youth ambassador program even further, then we're going to have the opportunity to make a individual impact across every single state in the nation.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time today and all your contributions towards this topic and making it a safer space for not only kids but adults. Hope to catch up with you soon on your work, and thank you again for joining me.
Yeah, thank you, Fiona.